disruption, of profound revolutionary change.
What we're really asking ministers is to empower the ambassadors.
The only thing that you really push forth is the truth.
You don't see many women represented when it comes to the decisions as to how to handle the pandemic.
Good afternoon and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us, whether in person or online, for this event about the future of connectivity. You're watching Politico Live and I'm coming to you from the AC events in Brussels. I am Mathieu Paulet. I've joined Politico very recently, and to be honest, what a time to join the tech team, but I'm very thrilled to host this panel anyway. So the internet has become an essential part of our economy and of our lives. We rely on it for communication, business, entertainment, but who should bear the cost of the networks of this critical infrastructure? Should it be left to the internet service providers, or should big content providers also be expected to contribute? Some European operators say it's unfair that they have to spend tens of billions of euros every year to keep up with the growing traffic, while a handful of data-hungry services reap most of the benefits. The large content providers, on the other hand, see no reason to split the bill, as they are already contributing to the ecosystem, and argue that making them pay for networks would allow actually operators to charge both them and the customers for the same service. To address this imbalance, the incumbent operators have come forward with a proposal, a direct payment mechanism. But it's not just a fight between big tech and big telcos, and that's something both sides agree on, although for different reasons. The debate is no less sensitive, and it goes by many names, and I'll try to be very cautious of this today. Some call it fair share or unfair share. Some would talk about a digital levy or tax. You could also come across what is called the standing party network pays principle. But if we're talking about this today, it's because the European Commission launched last month an exploratory consultation on the topic. But before we dive into discussion, we have some housekeeping remarks. So I would like to thank our partner Ethno for making this event possible. We would also very much like for you to join the conversation, and you can do so by tweeting at @LivePolitico or asking questions through Slido using the hashtag Telecoms Drumbeat. You know who we are, so I will be prioritizing questions with a name and organization, so it's transparent for both our panelists and our viewers. Ethno would also very much like to hear from you, and you can share your thoughts by answering the following poll. 5G and fiber to the home, how important are they for Europe? We will look at the results at the end of the discussion. Before we get started, last one thing, we'll now hear opening remarks from a partner, Ethno, with its Director General, Liz Fur. Liz, if you will.
Well, thank you, Mathieu, and good afternoon to our speakers and to our guests. Ethno represents the leading telecom operators in Europe since 1992. And we're proud to present this event, which builds on an 8 years partnership with Politico. The title of this event contains an important word: future. One that we need and want to hear more of in the days and age. I have 3 messages today. First, in the age of geopolitics and the deglobalization, digital infrastructure is more vital than ever for every state, for every company, for every citizen. In 2019, President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, laid out a vision for geopolitical commission. A Europe that is not naive and that affirms its values all over the world, including in digital spaces. Her intentions were tested in the harshest ways, first by the COVID pandemic, and then by Putin's invasion of Ukraine. And it's also thanks to this long-term vision that we stand here today. every EU citizen and every company did and is doing their small part in addressing today's challenges. For our part, I'm very proud of how telecom companies were able to handle the sudden shift to work in school from home during the pandemic. And I'm proud that telcos stepped up with the leadership of Commissioner Breton to provide services for Ukrainian refugees so they can stay connected with their homeland. All of this while working to respond to increasing cyber attacks and by looking at the future at what our sector can do to help slow down climate change. All of these challenges made us realize that advanced communication networks and services are crucial. They need to be built in Europe and for Europe. And this leads me to the second message. Policymaking in the geopolitical era and in times of crisis means that we need to be more mission-driven. This includes the politics for our sector, which is why ETNO has welcomed the recent European consultation on the future of telecoms. Many EU principles worked well and should not be changed. I'm thinking of the focus on consumers, of the accent of inclusion, of maintaining a thriving competitive environment, of the support to the media and creative sectors, of our open internet principles. Building on this, it's now important we ask daring questions on how Europe can foster a stronger homegrown ecosystem for telecommunications. For example, questions on the necessity of building scale inside and across European markets. Or again, looking at whether our European telecom companies, especially the smallest ones, have a fair shot at monetizing what happens in the internet ecosystem on top of their networks, or whether they aren't squeezed in face of tech platforms. This leads me to my third point and to the conclusion. Addressing such questions will be crucial if we are to seize the opportunities coming from the future of telecom technology. Ahead of us, there is tough work of completing the investment cycle in 5G and fiber, but also the need to reap the fruits that comes from it. Network virtualization, empowered by edge cloud and deployment of AI, will make our networks smarter. This means we'll be increasingly able to plug applications on top of the networks. In doing so, we're going to empower so many parts of our economy and society. Manufacturing, transports, healthcare, just to mention a few. And we need to plan for what comes up next. I'm thinking of 6G driven by European values, but also of the necessity of staying ahead on quantum encryption. To summarize it, virtual networks are going to be at the heart of our opportunity of growth, prosperity, and innovation in the future. Then it's easy to understand how the future of telecommunication is not just a sectoral matter, but one in which each European citizen and company has a major stake. Thank you, and over to you, Mathieu.
Thank you very much, Lise, for your insight and for highlighting the crucial role of telcos and the opportunities ahead. May I now ask our panelists to come on stage and join me? Please. Thank you very much for joining me on stage today. I'll make a quick round of introduction and then we can go right into the topic. So I'll start with you, Roberto Viola. So you're Director General at DG Connect from the European Commission. Marie-Noëlle Jégo-Lavessière, Deputy CEO at Orange for Europe. Then on your left, there is Philippe Malloch, Director of Economic and Social Policy, at Meta. And last is Konstantinos Masselos, Chair of BEREC, which is like the body of European regulators for electronic communication. And you've had a busy day today because we met on another debate on fair share already, or fair compensation. So as I said earlier, so the European Commission launched last month an exploratory consultation on the future of connectivity, not exclusively addressing the topic of this fair contribution by all digital players, but asking stakeholders about it. I would like to start here, and with you, Roberto, if that's okay. I was wondering, and I'll be a bit provocative here, I'd apologize.
Of course.
But is the consultation really exploratory? If I say this, is that because many stakeholders have expressed concern about it, arguing that it's framed in such a way that it doesn't really leave room for them to challenge, to question what they think is a biased premise.
Many thanks, first of all, to invite me. Mathieu, welcome in the fantastic tech team of Politico. And of course, in the style, you have to be provocative. It is a consultation, so everyone is invited to write whatever they like and whatever idea. And I don't think the people around this debate are scarce in terms of arguments they want to present. I mean, everyone has its own. When issues are important, and we have seen few, starting with the famous debate on net neutrality that led to the net neutrality rules, copyright, DSA, DMA. Of course, we see, the expectation that people would like to read, even from the consultation, what they like to read. But this is not the rule of the game. The rule of the game is that the questions are neutral, and then you answer whatever you like, and we will read it and analyze. So if someone would expect to read that we have already decided in one direction, it's not there. That we have embraced one business model against the other is not there. It is, by the way, you don't find the word fair share in the text. I don't know who invented the word, I find it particularly bad. You find instead something which is in the European principles, which is fair contribution to the society, which is a completely different debate. And that's the debate that we want to have. We would like to maintain this model which made Europe famous for its digital rules, which is the human-centric model, in a society that goes at the speed of light. The change to 4G to 5G has been a kind of 10-year change, rather painful, and still going on, with billions of investment. The change from 5G to 6G will be probably 5 years long, and even more investment. So this is the speed, but then with 6G comes fully connected drive, which means safer road. So, this whole exercise to make our economy and society better, especially in these gloomy days. That's why we think central is the debate about fair contribution to building this ecosystem. Fair share, we don't know what it is.
But let's hear it then from one of the telco themselves, with you, Marie-Noëlle. So what is the problem we're trying to solve here? What are the challenges that you as a telco are facing today?
What we see concretely is that, and you were talking about customers, and I guess it's a good starting point, but our customers are using more and more data, and in average, we face a 30% increase per year. So whether it would be 28 or 31, I don't think that's the question, but all, the studies said that these growths will, keep the same trend. So we invested a lot, and as a telco, if you take the European telco, we invested more than 50 billion euros on a yearly basis last year. So and this is, our duty to do. So we invested a lot, and we invested, much more than other partners like the big techs, as we call them, and that invested, very, very a small amount in infrastructure, and infrastructures are key. So what do we need to do? We need to keep investing because this will not end. So we need to make sure that we can contribute and altogether reach the digital decade objective. We need to make sure that the society will be more and more digitalized, and that is going to be the case for, all the citizens, which is not for granted as of today. So we need to make sure that we keep invest everywhere. And to be honest, the discussion that we have, and somebody asked me just before whether we have good relationship with the big techs. Yes, we do, for many topics. So it's not a question on principle. We've been working a lot on RCS, we've been working a lot on some devices. So we part on an ecosystem, and that we can build big things together and move forward. But for that specific topic, we do not find a fair discussion, an output on all the discussion that we may have, and our bargaining power is not there, and I did it. So when you're in a meeting to discuss, there's no way to discuss. And Orange, it's not the biggest one, but I can imagine that for smaller Tesco, it is even worse. So we do ask for a regulatory framework in which we will have commercial discussion, because this is what we used to do, in order to make sure that it has to be a fair contribution for all of us to the all the new technology, new services, and everything that are in front of us.
So, but is it a financial issue or a competition issue? Because I understand that it's also about telcos having difficulty making return on investment. But then the question is it fair for one industry to pay for the potential shortcomings of another?
No, we've been investing for years, and at Orange we invest more than 60 billion over the last decade. So if the question is, are you willing to invest? The answer, yes, we did it. So that's absolutely clear. This is what we are doing on a day-to-day basis. So this is not the question. The question is really to see whether there is a balance, an equilibrium on who is doing what. And in our network, between 50% and 70% are coming from, 5 or 6 big platforms. And it was clear, and if you want an example, during the COVID, for example, we had that, common issue to make sure that everything was stable. So we asked these big platforms and some players to optimize and decrease the data on our network in one day. We saw in one night a minus 20% of our network. So it's absolutely huge, and it makes a difference. And if it's 70% of the data on our network, it means that this is not a pure, equally distributed ecosystem. So there is an unbalanced situation that we can't face, and we would like to have our capability to discuss. It has nothing to do with net neutrality, which is absolutely okay for that. So we do not ask this kind of changes. We've been investing a lot, so we can easily prove that this is the way we run the companies. But this unbalanced situation has to be regulated in an open framework.
So Philippe, is it unbalanced? Is the relationship unbalanced?
First of all, thank you very much. Big thank you to Etno and Politico for inviting us. I don't think the term imbalance really holds much relevance to the discussion in reality. I mean, Marie-Noëlle mentioned the sort of division of traffic which exists in the network. I mean, the reality is a bit wherever it comes from. Whether it's Meta, whether it is Politico, whether it is Etno. So what relevance is it in the sense that there is a share or larger or smaller share for each of these companies? Because in the end, it's the consumer that is demanding these services, the consumer which is wanting to use the connection that they have paid for to consume our products, multiple other products, smaller products and others. So I hesitate to say that this notion of fairness or unfairness is relevant to a discussion when you're talking about who pays for what and who finances what on the other side.
You are investing already also in the infrastructure.
yes, we invest heavily in infrastructure, but also I think, Roberto's point is very relevant here. We're talking about an ecosystem. If we think about the digital decade targets, for example, this is not a discussion purely about infrastructure investment. There is very, very ambitious targets around 75% of companies using cloud technology, AI technology, big data, for example, 90% of small businesses upping the level of their digital skills and literacy and others. And companies like Meta and other large platforms invest a huge amount in products and services that allow these companies to digitize their businesses, to become more cloud native, more efficient as companies, and develop and grow. So I think in terms of when we talk about fairness and contribution, you have to take a view that this is an ecosystem in which there is services, there's products, there's content application. Networks play a hugely important part in that. There's no doubt about it. And as Marie-Noelle mentioned, we partner very closely with a lot of network providers. We invest heavily in infrastructure in Europe. We invest billions in infrastructure in Europe as well. But it's equally, just one point, Mathieu. Do we build networks in France? Mobile networks? No. Do we build cable networks in Finland? No. Because that's not our job. So our job is to develop the content and applications and services which European consumers want to enjoy. And it's telco's job to build and invest in the networks which they then monetize and build for the consumer.
But do you understand then the argument, like some telcos would ask for the bill to be split, because obviously you're arguably the one making the most value out of the network?
Well, I think also from a telco perspective, there's a lot of value being made out of our services and our investment. And like I say, everyone does their job in the ecosystem. So we invest tens of billions every year in developing content and application and services that consumers want to use and enjoy. And so I think this idea that you would kind of split investment for one part of the value chain strikes me as a very odd division of labor, given that this symbiotic relationship in this ecosystem has developed very well over time. Marie-Noelle pointed very clearly to the partnership that exists. If you look now across many European countries, I used to live in Brussels, I've just moved, sadly, and Proximus came to my house to sell me fiber. They didn't come to my house and say, pay more for the fiber because you want to watch the light blink faster on your Wi-Fi router. The sales pitch was on Disney+. The sales pitch was on YouTube. This is how you will enjoy the utilization of your infrastructure. It's the same if you look in the UK, for example. Vodafone will sell you a package where you get 24 months subscription included for YouTube Premium or for Amazon Prime or these kinds of things. It's a symbiotic relationship that's developed over time. So I don't think this notion that someone should be taking someone else's investment is particularly relevant here.
Mm-hmm. So Konstantinos, as chair of BEREC, you've worked on the issue, actually, and you've released not so long ago a preliminary assessment on the matter. Do you mind walking us through the key findings here of that preliminary assessment and whether you're going to revisit it in the light of this new consultation?
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting BEREC to this very interesting panel and discussion. You are right. We started working on this fair contribution issue last year, and actually we started with an ad hoc project in June 2022, which led to the preliminary assessment that we published in October. But it was, of course, a first step of this work. We focused specifically on the potential introduction of direct remunerations using the sending party network-based principle that has been applied in South Korea, for example, and we examined this case, and the preliminary assessment of BEREC came to the conclusion that something like this is not justified at this stage, and maybe the introduction of this kind of regulation could harm the internet ecosystem. But at the same time, for example, one of the main conclusions of our preliminary assessment was that it's clear that there is a strong dependence and interdependence, strong relation between content application providers, over-the-tops, and telecom network operators. So this is an important, a strong relationship. And of course, the issue of investing in very high-capacity networks, which is a capital-intensive project, is something broader than just examining the introduction of the sending party network-based principle. And of course, we see today that the exploratory consultation that was launched by the European Commission is indeed broader than the fair contribution issue.
So what are the alternative, the other leverage we could use to pace up the rollout of networks?
Well, I think we can consider a number of issues when we're discussing creating the right environment to attract investments, incentivize investments, to speed up the rollout of very high capacity networks. We can first consider the spectrum assignment procedures. We have seen different paradigms during 5G spectrum allocation in Europe. We use auctions, but there is again a range where we can pick up our position in these spectrum assignment processes. It depends how we look spectrum assignment and spectrum auctions. Is it a mechanism, a tool to raise budget for the governments in the first step, or is it a tool to promote long-term return of investment and promote the fast development of networks? Of course, we should always consider optimizing civil engineering costs and administrative procedures with regards to fast network deployment. And these days, except from the exploratory consultation that was launched in February, we have also the Gigabit Recommendation and the Gigabit Infrastructure Act, two very important tools that can help us optimize network deployment costs, civil engineering costs, optimize administrative procedures, right-of-ways, and access to infrastructure. And this is also very important. Of course, we can always consider infrastructure sharing as a very important tool to optimize and speed up network deployments by sharing costs between operators. We can consider wholesale-only operators model. This is promoted by the European Electronic Communications Code, which is again a way to share infrastructure. And of course, we should always have in mind that public subsidies might be needed in KE, especially for areas where network deployment is not of commercial interest. So there are different issues we can look at to support, to create the right environment and attract investments for network deployment. But this is, in my opinion, one side of the problem. We should also have also the demand side in our mind. So, of course, we want to build networks. Of course, we will have the basic infrastructure for the digital transformation, but also for the green transition. But at the same time, we need to address the demand side. So we want these networks to be financially viable in the future. We want these networks to be accessible by all citizens. This means services should be competitively priced. So there are two parts in this.
Mm-hmm. Roberto, you're very popular in the questions we are asked. I'm telling you.
So we are asking questions.
So I'll ask you one. I'll probably add to it. Someone in the audience who remained anonymous, and I'm sorry to read that. Ask about net neutrality, obviously, because that's a very sensitive also issue in the light of this debate, and ask how come there is not a single question in the consultation about it. And what I will add to this is, if we were to move this proposal forward, if based on the data you're collecting, you deem it necessary, how can we make sure it will not infringe the net neutrality rules?
But that's my moment of glory.
Please.
Because when we wrote, and I was, of course, directed the team at that time, the rules of net neutrality, the only one in the world, by the way, that exists, everybody came up with disaster. I mean, one part say the end of the internet, the other part, the end of telecoms. Now everybody takes this test as a sacred cow and goes around. Maybe I have something to say since I wrote it. No, I mean, so why there's nothing in the consultation? Because there's nothing to ask. We will not change it because the net neutrality rules are for the best effort internet, and they shall stay. I mean, this is the basis of all our construction. there's no reason, and VP Vestager said it very clearly, I mean, to change those rules. So why we should ask a question about it? I mean, so that's a very simple answer. I mean, then if we want to enter into the interpretation of the net neutrality rules, we can stay the next 3 hours. I mean, but that's the reason. Simple answer, simple question. There's no need to ask a question on something we don't want to change.
That I get, but if we were to move this forward, at some point, I guess the question will be raised, even though I do understand that nobody here wants to reopen the debate on net neutrality, that I get. But if we were to impose a direct payment mechanism on some operators and not others, would it discriminate traffic at some point? You're the expert here, so you tell me.
Who wants to put a kind of thing like this? Is the kind of thing that doesn't make any sense, no? So, Maybe I should make an example too, because I heard terms which are very complicated, sending parting pays, all these kind of things. There's a video on YouTube of me explaining quantum communication with 2 glasses and a bottle of water. So, what are we debating here? I mean, suppose you want to go on a 2-star hotel on a very popular flight destination, and there are people wanting to go on a 6-star hotel. They all go on the same flight. Now imagine you pay a price because you want to go to 2-star, less price, and the other one, since they are going to an hotel which is much better, they pay another price. Absurd, no? So that's the best for the internet. It doesn't make any sense, I mean, to make any distinction. But then, suppose there are many people wanting to go to the 6-star hotel, then what happens in the airline business? That the airline raises the prices for everyone. Not for you or for the other one. And then, in a way, it becomes a little bit discriminatory, because the people that can go to the 6-star hotel, they can pay, the others, they have a problem. Now, telecom has been an heavily regulated business. So far, service provision like platform has not been. Now, things are changing, because news of DSA, DMA, both are regulated entities. So it's again, a little bit more level play field. But if you allow now very heavy deregulation on price, because price regulated in Europe meant that everybody enjoyed, really, I mean, the possibility to have very good quality service at very low price. Now, suppose you say total deregulation. Could be a model. Say US style, no net neutrality, no regulation, everything. Then you see what happened. I mean, prices are going up. And then what happens is the federal budget had to put 50 billion dollars for the low-income families, which will finish in 2 years. Now, so the question will be, for the US, for Europe, what happens if we cannot continue, as we cannot continue, I mean, to pay for people that cannot afford services, and what is the model that would sustain all of this? That's why we are into the fair contribution debate rather than who gains, who loses out of this game. So that's why the net neutrality doesn't enter into this equation.
But so I'll be pushy. I'm sorry.
Yes, I like it.
So what happens if we establish a direct payment mechanism and one of the content provider doesn't want to pay? Do we block it?
I mean, again,
I know it's highly speculative. So I get that, but
look. There are 2 parties. One sends the content and the other one distributes it. I mean, who on earth would not distribute a content which is popular? Who on earth would like to have lousy networks to distribute that content? So I think the system, so far, there's no European rules that say you have to send the content, and another rule says you have to do a certain quality for, I mean, entertainment videos. But there's a kind of mutual symbiosis here of interest, which keeps this equilibrium going. I mean, now the question is, suddenly now there should be a regulator, I mean, coming in between this, or market forces can level off, or whatever. So let's see what will be the answers. Let's see what will be, the ideas. But so far, the problem has never been there materializing. The problem of net neutrality was not, you don't receive the content. It was, can you block the content of your competitors? The answer is clear, no. So if the question is, can an access provider block one content and not the other? No, that cannot be done.
Okay, thank you. I think what would be useful, maybe, Marie-Noëlle, if you could shed some light on is, I know so the consultation is still ongoing, but how much would you like to get from this, from these large traffic generators? And maybe most importantly, who should them be? I'm not asking you to drop names, but maybe what would be the criteria or threshold you would like you as Orange?
No, I will not, come to the end of the discussion because, that's not the topic. What I want really to emphasize is that, what we need is a framework. On the other way, we need to be fully transparent. We need to be fully accountable. So this is really something that we can put on the table. We do have altogether, kind of a huge responsibility of making sure that everywhere we and all the citizens will be able to benefit from the best networks and the best services, that we will be able to move forward to new technology and to have everybody covered by this new technology and not to have, so this is something that we need to make together, and in the digital decades, declaration, we need to do that on a fair contribution, all trying to, move forward, and then you need to see whether we have something which is a, common framework to do so. It is for us that only objective, and for that, we will be fully transparent, put things on the table. We do not realize that's not the end of the game, and then we will have, the 6G and so on. So we will, of course, all together do some efforts on the, the amount of data on our network, on the green issues that for which we need also to be responsible, because this is a common good, I should say. So all these will move forward, but the fact is that, this is a very, very few platforms that are making the difference. So we need to have kind of an incremental cost for this capacity, which is not, our usual, business that we're doing by, moving forward in our own business. So we're talking about part of these pieces and not on our, global issues. So let's have that discussion between us, commercial discussion. But the question is, how can we, just sit around the table and ask, talking all together, making sure that exactly what you say, we will enable more and more customers to get access to connectivity and services. So that discussion has to take place, and this is not the case today.
So yeah, let's have a look actually at the bigger picture here. So according to ETNO's latest annual report, so European operators risk falling short of the gigabyte objectives by the end of the decade. And I'd like to ask maybe Konstantinos, maybe Roberto about, is it really catastrophic if dozens of Europeans are still not covered by those gigabit networks? What's the impact for these citizens, for businesses?
It's a real catastrophe. I don't know. You might disagree. I like the concept of a zero-distance society, which is a post-COVID society. It doesn't really matter where you are, so zero distance, provided that you have the tools in terms of capabilities, but also the means to connect to the best university, to your working place, wherever it is, and work together with people in Canada, in India, and in Australia. So that's the society of the future. So if thousands of citizens of Europe will not participate to the society of the future, I say catastrophe, total catastrophe.
Konstantinos?
Well, I agree, of course. Connectivity is the basis for development, and we should indeed go for the objectives that we have defined for 2030 for fixed and wireless connectivity. And it's not only Europe that has defined very ambitious objectives with regard to connectivity. For example, if you consider deployments in other countries like China, South Korea, with regards to 5G or with regards to fiber, we can say that we can further improve our deployments in Europe. Just to give you an example about 5G, If we consider the number of 5G base stations per 100,000 inhabitants, in South Korea this number is above 400. In China is above 100. In Europe is 57, and this is according to the 5G Observatory report of October 22. And if we consider penetration of fiber to the premises, we will see that countries like United Arab Emirates, China, South Korea are even above 90%, and we European countries, Spain is up at a level of 68, Sweden at 64. And we can further improve. So connectivity is something very important indeed. It's going to be a big failure if we cannot meet our objectives for 2030, but this is for every country in the world. I mean, it's not something special for Europe.
If we're talking about this whole debate about like the challenges that the telcos or the continent is facing, there is also what's in the air, Philip, is that big content providers are not managing their traffic very efficiently, or they're not doing the best they can. So I would really like to hear from you about this, and also because there is also this premise that traffic is going out of control, and I know that's something you not necessarily agree with.
No, that's just a false statement, to be quite frank with you. Every content application provider has incentives from their own business perspective to make sure their services run as efficiently as possible across networks. That includes making sure that you take measures to ensure that the types of content the user wants is appropriate for the device they have at that right moment in time. It's making sure features like autoplay, for example, for the user don't automatically begin when the user's battery is low, for example. Also, I think it's a bit of a misnomer that companies like Meta or others just kind of stand there and just throw traffic out and just let things happen. We do an enormous amount of research into compression technology, into delivery as well. We just announced a new codec for the compression of MP3 traffic over the network. This is a new technology that's been developed actually in Paris at Facebook AI Research in Paris that compresses the traffic 10 times more than is currently possible. We open source these solutions as well, so others are able to use them as well. So absolutely, we have an incentive to ensure that our services run as efficiently as possible. So we deliver the quality to the end users. We ensure that the networks that carry them are able to do so in an efficient manner also to ensure the quality across the end of it. There is no advantage in a company like Meta creating an air of disruption around its own services by being irresponsible in this manner. So I do think it's another one of these kind of sort of whack-a-mole type issues that we need to keep sort of running around and knocking on the head, because there really isn't this approach from companies like ourselves and content application providers to just generate a poor quality of experience for our users.
I know you would like to react, but I'd just like to follow up on this, and because we're looking at the future today for the discussion, can we also expect more traffic surges with the upcoming metaverse or metaverses? Will it be a game changer also, like for the debate?
I think we of course, you've heard from Meta as well. I mean, we believe this is the next evolution of the internet, and this is something which we are heavily involved in as a company. For the foreseeable future, from a Meta perspective, the metaverse develops over Wi-Fi. It's a fixed technology we develop over Wi-Fi. The fixed network has far more capacity, for example. The marginal cost of production of that extra bit of data is much less than in the mobile network. So we are a big believer in the Wi-Fi via fiber solution, because if you look at the solutions now from our hardware perspective, we're looking at primarily in-home, in-office usage for these types of devices. And so we primarily believe that it's actually going to be a fixed Wi-Fi solution for the foreseeable future. Right now, for us, 75% of our data is delivered over a fixed and Wi-Fi solution, because people use devices in-home, they use them in-office. And so we believe that actually, I'm a bit more of an optimist on Europe. I think I've had a bit of a doomsday scenario about what's going to occur in the future. I think Europe's doing amazing things, and European operators are doing amazing things when it comes to investment in networks. I think Spain's been mentioned. It's a fantastic country when it comes to the investment in fiber infrastructure. Right in this country here, you see the very bold strategy taken by Proximus to cover this country in fiber and 5G, allocate a huge amount of resource to that. So I think I'm a little bit more optimistic on the networks in Europe, and I think we see that the network and the investment trajectory in Europe is more than capable of coping with the evolution of the metaverse as we see it from our company's perspective.
Thank you. So you wanted to react, Mike?
Yeah, just a couple of points, and I guess these green topics it's very important. I'm not saying, and nobody, I guess, would say that you don't mind.
But yes, actually putting explaining what you're saying, putting a price signal on traffic.
What we really need to make sure that there's many connectivity. We can have mobile, fiber, Wi-Fi. At the end of the day, the customers is picking the one he wants, first of all, and even for the mobile, if you have a 100 kilometers mobile call, you do many fix at the end of the day. And that has to be more and more seamless for the customers, and we will one and another, knowing, and you were talking about energy, that Wi-Fi is not the best one, because when you go, fiber is much more efficient than copper, but Wi-Fi is making the difference. So we need also to work on that to make sure that Wi-Fi is not using too much energy. Let me give you a very concrete example. In 2022, in the 7 countries in Europe of Orange, 6 countries plus Moldova, but I'm taking care of, the traffic on the network increases by 32%, okay? 32% is huge, okay? So it means that we need to have, capacity, investment, blah, blah. The energy that we use on our network decreases by 1%, okay? So for the planet, I agree, this is not the -10 that we would love to target, but still 1% is absolutely huge, and our engineers did a wonderful, tremendous work in doing that, opening new features on the network, blah, 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 blah. So doing -1 seems very, very, very small. Knowing that you have a plus 30% is huge. But we need to do something, and how can we, redo it? So we need to work together, so we need to be incentivized to do so. So this is my duty, this is your duty, this is everyone, and we need to make sure that we decrease, whatever content goes on our network, and all have an interest to do so.
Konstantinos, you wanted to add something to this?
Yeah, first a comment with regards to energy of networks. We should always have in mind that except from the digital transformation objectives, we have also our sustainability objectives. Europe aims at becoming the first climate neutral region of the world by 2050. And this means that we should reduce carbon dioxide emissions by 55% by 2030. And telecom networks contribute significantly, both with regards to their own energy dissipation, but also as a platform to optimize the energy dissipation of other activities, other verticals, etc. For example, 5G can be widely used to optimize and enable the digital transformation of other sectors and optimize energy dissipation. So this with regards to energy. But going back to the applications we discussed about metaverse, we should also have in mind that we have a new set of applications coming, for example, with regards to 5G, autonomous driving, autonomous cars, telemedicine, that not only require fast networks, but require quality of service properties that are also interesting, like latency, predictability, resiliency of the network, and reliability. So we need to see the broader picture of applications in the future and consider what our networks in the future should look like. So maybe we need to consider that we need software-defined networks where the principle of slicing that we see in 5G will be used to achieve this quality of services that some specialized applications require.
Thank you. We're getting already very close to the end. I will ask another question from the audience, and once again, it's for you, Roberto. People are very interested about what will be the next step, apparently, to this consultation. But first, so apparently there are rumors that a legislative proposal will be out in summer, and there would be no prior impact assessment. You are asked whether you can outrule this.
Are there rumors also are going to play for Real Madrid?
Of course not. I know it's a bit sensitive to comment on rumors, but I guess let's broaden the questions. So what will be the next step, and will there be, if there is a next step, an impact assessment?
Well, I mean, of course, we ask all those questions not for the fun of having, some answers, but to have then an informed policy decision. There might well be a legislation, might be something else. It's very early days to say. And then, of course, all the rules about our internal rules about how good decision making will be applied. Sometime, if there's a tremendous urgency, we decide to bypass some of the rules. For instance, the CHIP Act or the recovery plan was not done with an impact assessment, but normally this is the exception to the rule.
Could there be an emergency here?
What emergency?
Emergency. I don't know. You just mentioned urgency.
Island in 3D that needs to be delivered immediately.
No, I'm asking whether that could be an option, like whether you deem it to be an urgent matter.
I don't know. I hope not, because urgent matters are about the pandemic, the war, and things like this. So I hope there's no such kind of doomsday scenario. But I don't know why the people are so obsessed about our internal rules, frankly, because every time there's a legislation...
People seem very concerned from the questions I get,
because
so that's why don't kill the messenger.
I know the people that they ask to me every time this question. So, and I always say, why are you so interested about impact assessment? So in any case, of course, by the way, one of the first and most important steps of an impact assessment is to do a public consultation.
Okay. And are all options on the table? I'm asking you this because Commissioner Breton said repeatedly that all options were on the table, and he said also there will be no taboos over merger or cross-market consolidation. So I'm asking you again, can you tell me whether all options are on the table?
All options are on the table. Of course, we cannot change competition law, which is written in the treaty. These kind of things are not an option on the table, but whatever is an option that makes the outcome for our society better, it's an option,
Okay, thank you very much. I'm afraid we really need to conclude our debate. There are many other topics I would have liked to address now. I'm so sorry, I can feel the disappointment here. I'm very sorry. We'll have other opportunities, I guess, to do so. But let's hear it from you one more time, and maybe if we could do so with the result of the poll that was presented by Ethno, that would be great. Is there any way for our panelists to see it on the screen so they can see the results? So as you remember, the question was 5G and fiber to the home, how important are they to Europe? Because I can't even see the results myself, so that would be...
Yeah.
I can maybe tell you.
Yeah, please.
So but I can't see it actually. I don't know why. But so there were three options to the question whether 5G and fiber to the home are important to Europe. So the first option is a lot. They are relevant to our competitiveness, and surprisingly, 70% of the respondents voted for that option. The second option is somewhat important, and then we have like a fair of 22% of respondents, and 6% of respondents said that not too much. It's just not a tech gadget. So what I would like is, I would like to give you the floor one last time, only if you can promise to make it short. Oh, here's the panel, if you want to,
Okay.
the poll. So I would like to give you the floor one more time for conclusion remark, and maybe you can tell us what does this inspire you. Let's start with you, Roberto.
Well,
Please.
I just want to say that I'm very, very happy that for the time being, Web 4.0 made it to the conclusions of the leaders, to the European Council, which is a good sign that in those days we just not speak about only energy crisis, the terrible thing happening in Ukraine, but also we look at the future. And Web 4.0, it's really the game changer. It's where, you will superimpose what you see with what is being calculated, so the models and, the representation of it, not just the 3D thing you go and play. It's real things that will change our life in many aspects. And they need what we call the computing continuum to be delivered, which means altogether the networks, the cloud, and the supercomputing. If you want one car to communicate with the other and make sure there are no accidents with the pedestrian and the cyclist, you need a super fast network, super performant, both from data storage and computing as well. This is why we have started this journey of the consultation and the ideas we want to have around this.
Thank you very much for your insight, Mainan.
Very quickly, the digital decade objective are fully consistent with our purpose. And this is a huge responsibility that we have, all of us, to make sure that we reach the target for all the different citizens, not only for the same ones living in some places. We need to do that for B2C, for B2B. We need to do that for reaching a level where we can have competitive enterprise everywhere. So that's not an option. We need also to make sure that we do it in a safe way, meaning, when we were talking about energy, so we can talk about cyber defense, but there's many ways. So we need to do it, and for everyone, we need to do it in a safe way. And these require huge investment that we did, and we will keep doing. What we're just asking for is that making sure that for few players that are eating 70 or 75% of the network, we can sit together and discuss in a framework where we will have a fair discussion.
Thank you, Philip.
Thank you. Yeah. Look, I think whichever way we turn, you need to put the consumer in the middle of this entire view. So if we're looking at frameworks that start to add cost into the development or the production of services, you need to assess what that does on the consumer side of things. Marie-Noël mentioned a negotiation. I mean, we discuss many things all the time. I think it's difficult to see a negotiation if you're forced to buy what the other party's selling and then it's enforced in a way in which, this is a two-sided market already. There doesn't need a regulator to come in there. I mean, telecoms operators just recently launched a fantastic advertising joint venture, which will utilize some of the data network capabilities. Big fanfare in Barcelona about network KPIs, which are now a big part of that. So just be very, very conscious of the impact on the consumer and then on the development of products and services in Europe, should you start to try and increase costs into the ecosystem.
Okay, thank you very much. Konstantinos?
So, connectivity is a basic utility. There is no doubt about this. We need to look the future networks, but I would add the word sustainable next to the word future. So future sustainable networks in three directions: environmentally sustainable, financially sustainable, and socioeconomic sustainable. So we do not only need networks as consumers, but also to produce, to contribute. We want networks to contribute to the real economy.
Thank you very much to the four of you. Thank you very much again for your time and your insights.
Thank you.
Yeah, we can close. Thank you very much in the audience for joining us in person, for tuning in online, and finally, thanks to our partner Ethno for making this event possible. So you can check our website for the latest lineup on all POLITICO's events, including our upcoming Europe Tech Summit happening on April 26th and 27. That's a bit of self-promotion. And I guess the conversation is just about the future of connectivity has just begun, and we'll have many other opportunities. There are many other topics I would have liked to address, customers also, but lessons also from the South Korea example, which would have been very interesting. But that will be for another time. Thank you again. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mathieu.
Thanks a lot. Thank you. Sorry, I hope you're not running late. Thank you. Bye.
This is an age of disruption, of profound revolutionary change.
What we're really asking ministers is to empower the ambassadors.
The only thing that you really push forth is the truth.
You don't see many women represented when it comes to the decisions as to how to handle the pandemic.